Hello there and welcome. In this video I got you 10 tips and tricks around the Underlegion in Monster Train 2. We're going to work over all the things that make this faction tick, and you can take this video basically as an extended tutorial or beginner's guide for the faction in itself. I will do another video that features more powerful specific builds in the future, so stay tuned. And without further ado, let's get into the mushroom people. So, number one that I want to talk about is the innate mechanic of Propagate. Propagate is amazing. It increases your buffs and it increases the enemy's debuffs. It is really cool. It just doesn't work on Dazed because that would just break the game's mechanics. Altogether, this means we have an insane compatibility with buffing and debuffing because we can just make numbers go up that no other faction can make go up. We can increase stacks of spell weakness, damage weakness, damage shield, immortality. No, that's not called immortality. Undying, I think it was. No, reanimate. All these stacks that are usually harder to increase are for these guys just one propagate item or equipment or spell away. This is really an insane quality that makes them compatible to builds that really are quirky, interesting, and fun to play. Lone Code for itself is an amazing item, and it's not even rare. So, number two, the other mechanic that we have sort of unique on these guys is the troop and the harvest mechanic. Harvest is here on these guys not really available on their troops, but we have a hero that features the harvest mechanic. And if you want more harvest mechanic, the remnant people are way to go. Either way, we have a ways and means to profit off of the death of our own troops, and we can create fungi. These guys have the troop stat, which means they can squeeze infinite amounts of units in one square, even in a full room. It's pretty nice. And every time they lose 4 HP, or however many HP a troop stack has, you can manipulate that. This counts as a unit has died on the floor, with all its benefits and downsides. So your hero here that I presented to you, for example, would get every time a harvest stack. Everything that benefits from death can insanely benefit from these troop stacks. In the positive or in the negative, because there's also enemies that have the same stat, and this is where you have to be careful. Either way, this is a very unique mechanic, giving you very interesting things to play around when units die. For example, here we have also the Extinguish trade, which makes also good things happen when units die. Altogether, unit death is something you can strongly utilize with these guys. So number three, we are very centric around buffs and debuffs, as the Propagate mechanic already has sort of hinted at, but the rest of the cards really work towards that as well. We have sap available in really high amounts. I don't think any other faction can sap as hard as these. This is amazing because you can really pretty much neuter the enemy entirely, and an enemy without attack points and enough sap stacks can even be killed by your Pyre Heart. No problem. Without any risk even. So that's one thing, very powerful strategy at your hand. The other thing is you have Decay. Decay is a very powerful damage over time effect that is inflicting lots of damage, and it does slowly wear off. But altogether, it's, I think, the strongest damage over time effect in game, and you can therefore really do a lot of heavy lifting in either debuffing the enemy or slowly killing them. You can also, via the Propagate mechanic, pump up any buffing that you can pick up from your secondary clan into ways and means that are pretty nasty. What's pretty interesting to note though is that we don't have too many own ways of buffing our guys. We are heavier on the debuffing route because, you know, when you listen to these guys, what they're talking about, they're not exactly healthy for most other species. Either way, you can go for any other culture, pick up their buffing strat, and good you are. Now, Let's talk about number 4, a heavy downside that I noticed. Innately, these guys have a very, very low access to direct damage. While Decay might be quite devastating, it is a time-delayed thing. It only triggers at the end of turn. That means the enemy gets to do whatever they want to do the entirety of the turn, and then they die. This can be sometimes a very, very problematic scenario, leading to you being overrun or something like that, because you just need too much time to kill off the enemy. This is a real dangerous scenario, but as long as you are aware of the fact, you can work around that. So ideally, I've made the experience, it really sums up to say it pays off to pick up tools from your secondary clan to mitigate that weakness somehow. Be it direct damage to nuke out the things that make you really troubled, or be it ways and means to move the enemy into positions where you can easily just destroy them, stuff like that. But you have to work around that weakness. So number 5, spell enhancer synergies that the Underlegion likes. So when enhancing your spells, you are really almost not relying on spell power whatsoever. Wrecking Pain is one hell of a damage spell, but it's basically the only direct damage spell that I know from the back of my mind that will directly benefit from spell power. There's very, very low amounts of these, therefore all the other utility upgrades are massively more interesting, like cost reduction. What I also noticed, double stack is really, really desirable for these guys. Double stack and spell chain couple up into a devastating plethora of spell combos that you can do, because double stack is basically what spell power would be for these guys. It just makes you inflict double as many stacks as the name implies, and yeah, that is really, really wrecking in many of these spells, as they are already very powerful when applied once. Yeah. Also quite interesting is that we have a direct usage for consumption on cards. We have the edge mechanic on the Moral Mistress. It is not ubiquitously present, but it is very powerful to apply decay. So consume cards, or making cards, turning cards into consume cards, is with this unit specifically very, very potent. When it comes down to our unit enhancements, things are quite interesting too. We have either tanking via troops in form of fungi, or we tank via a few of our heavier troopers, like the Bombabello being the heaviest and most costly one, but the Spore Launcher and the Prickly Puffball all have medium amounts of HP, but it all comes down to one thing that I realized: tankiness has to be acquired for these guys. So therefore, defensive stats are really nice to have, and dualism was also something that I really enjoyed. Dualism is basically double stack for units, and since we have so many units that inflict status effects, we really, really thrive on putting this on our troops. I also found that Endless is a pretty nice stat, because we have a couple of units that really love to just pop up and die, like the Green Recruit or the various mushroom types that just devastate the enemy when summoned. These are also really enjoying the Endless stat, so you can use them more like a spell you can toss at the enemy. Yeah. Also, what I noticed, last but not least, you can do quite nice things with size manipulation. Making units larger is not so much of a big deal if you're running fungi, because they ignore the limitations of room sizes anyways. And the other point that I realized is using smidge stones to make your units smaller is also pretty amazing. Use it on a Spore Launcher, for example, and you have one hell of a support unit with decent stats that only needs one size. I noticed that compactifying mushrooms is extremely powerful, because you have so many of these guys having devastating effects when something is being summoned or otherwise is popping up. And the more you compactify these guys on one spot, the better. On the contrary, though, making the units larger can sometimes also give you a pretty good blocker, but I think they profit more from compactification. Now, let's talk about a couple of build ideas. The most straightforward one, and number 7 that I want to introduce, or at least for me personally, it was the most straightforward one, is a troop-based build. So you can use this with either the rally trait or the harvest trait. They both work quite decently. This build I like to pair up with the Banished in that regard for the addition of Valor, which gives you really more oomph and armor for your frontline. As soon as you have Valored up your troop stack, they really die much, much slower, and you have the ability to move just people where you need them to be. You can bring the enemies that you need to kill at the front of the place, and you also have the ability to ascend or descend troublemakers into other floors where you can handle them more easily. It's a very, very powerful strat. The other variant that I do see work for this troop build is definitely with the Awoken, because, you know, everything troop-centric can be peppered up easily with their healing and buffing powers. It's a fun combination. Now, number 8, a Decay-centric build. So, since Decay is such a powerful damage-dealing trait, I like to pair that up with either the Lazarus Leak's unstable mechanic, because, you know, once the enemy's damage over time has reached the unstable threshold, they start exploding. This is pretty nice because this speeds up the whole decay process, as I have mentioned before. It tends to be a little bit too slow. Unstable fixes that problem. The other direction that I see quite nicely working with damage over time would be the Lunar Coven, because here you have the access to direct damage to just blast away the things that are worrying you. Since they have so much self-inbuilt conduit and other effects, you have an easy time to bring these spells to the necessary power. And you have also mobility tools and debuffing tools in form of daze and such that you can keep up the control long enough until the enemy decomposes before your feet. Number 9, another build strategy that I found quite fun was propagation for own buffs. So it's basically very similar to the troop build, but unlike the troop build, you can now use just your own inbuilt units for this one and just buff the hell out of them. The Bombabello, once you have him, is the ideal candidate for that. Pair it up with a Banished or the Awoken, buff up this guy, and just as soon as they die, you just have an army behind it that just goes crazy. It's very simple. You just bring up propagation as much as you can, bring up the buffs that make your team stronger, and the rest plays pretty much out for itself. Number 10, the last thing that I wanted to introduce is a harvest-centric build. So that means profiting most around the death of units. You don't have any direct candidates for the harvest mechanic, as you see here. This is, oops, that was not what to click. The harvest mechanic is unique to the remnant people, and the Wickless Baron in combination with the fungi is alone a very, very insane power pump. You know, they die and they grow stronger. Overall, a harvest-centric strategy means that you want to use all those cheap effort units that die quickly, summon them as blockers, you want them to die, and reap the benefits out of that. I found these playstyles to be most profitable with the Remnants or also with the Lazarus League, as they have so many units that give you a benefit when they die. Be it their equipment dudes, which then in return will make your own units that you buff up with the whole harvest strat incredibly powerful, or you just go for the strategy that your low crap units are going to be so resilient and dealing so much damage while they die that you also get the damage down. It's a little bit of a quirky strategy, but very fun to play, and I wanted to introduce it because I personally enjoyed it a lot. When it works, it's really, really massively fun to play. Now, obviously, there's way more to say about these guys, and this was just the tip of the iceberg. So if you want to help me out with the creation of the deeper strategy guide, let me know in the comment section any broken or game-changing combos you know of these guys. And feel free to leave a like, leave a subscribe. Also, feel free to donate to the channel. Feel free to subscribe to the YouTube channel membership thingy. Whatever support I am deeply appreciating it. Saying thanks here to all the supporters. You guys are awesome. And also a big thanks to you for watching this video up until the very end. Appreciate you taking that time. I hope it was helpful, and see you on the next one.